Hello everybody, you're listening to the Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. As always, my name is Dane Cobain. You can reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s to share, local arts news, etc. Don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. So this week is a super exciting episode for me because we are going to be chatting to Gion, who is the percussionist of the Jonestown Massacre. He's also written a book called In the Jingle Jangle Jungle, which details his time with the band. They're one of my favourite bands. Joel is an absolute legend, so it's super cool to have been able to chat to him. But before we chat to Joel, we are going to head over to the Yorkshire. No, we are not. We're going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for the latest instalment of Insomniac, which is a short story by myself, Dane Cobain. We've been serialising it in recent weeks. Here's the latest part.
It was dreamy, almost absent-minded, and it floated so softly in the stale air of her apartment that for a second she thought she'd imagined it. Then it came again. "It's nice to finally meet you, Kate." "Who is this?" She looked around the room as though she was expecting to see a trail of ectoplasm across the wall, but everything looked normal. It smelled normal too, but it felt all wrong, like an English pub in a foreign country that's nailed the look and feel but not the atmosphere. Something was wrong here. "I have many names," the voice said, "but you can call me Zeb." "Zeb?" Kate repeated. She thought back to the conversation with her grandmother and wondered when she'd started speaking more to the dead than to the living. "What do you want from me?" Zeb laughed. It was a cool, cold laugh, emotionless and brutal, like the grinding of gears or the noise of a cliff collapsing. Kate shivered and looked desperately around the room, but nothing. She made to run towards the door, and it slammed shut of its own accord. She scratched at it with her nails and tried to drag it open, but it was held tight by an invisible force from the other side. Kate repeated her cry again, a little louder this time. She wondered if old Mrs. Vanderbilt next door could hear her, and if so, whether she'd call the police. "What do you want from me?" she bellowed. Zeb stopped laughing, and the absence of the sound was almost as ominous as the moment it had first appeared. "I'm here for you, Kate," Zeb said. And then he laughed again, and the world went white. Week 20, day 2. After hearing Zeb and passing out, Kate had cut down on her medication and stopped double dosing. It wasn't helping her much, and her sleeping pattern was worse than ever. She was also starting to worry about side effects. In particular, she was worried she was losing her mind and that if she wasn't careful, she'd end up going to meet her grandmother on the other side of the ether. She hadn't heard from either Zeb or her grandmother since the incident with the laughter and the whiteout, and she was glad. On the Tuesday of week 20, a couple of weeks before Christmas, she found herself at an interview. It was her first real interview since a simultaneous dismissal and resignation from the agency, and she was so nervous that she barely slept the night before and hardly ate anything. By the time she'd been ushered into a back room at the supermarket, she was shaking violently and hoping that the interviewer wouldn't notice. If they did notice, she planned to pass them off as an attack of the nerves, which was partially true at best. The store's manager was impressed enough to progress her to the second phase of interviews, which basically consisted of giving her a tour of the facilities and showing her the shelves she'd be stacking. Kate had worked at a supermarket before, and so it was already familiar, and it wasn't like it took a degree to restock or to cover for someone on one of the tills. And then it happened in the darkness. The manager told Kate to wait while she checked on a shipment, and so she found herself perching precariously on a stack of wooden pallets. Then the lights went out and the temperature dropped. Kate shrieked and toppled over backwards. She hit her head on the floor and the shockwave rolled through her body. For some reason, her elbow hurt. Then the laughter came. She recognised it. Zeb was here. And then he disappeared again and the lights came back. She was curled up in a ball on the warehouse floor and her potential boss was staring down at her. There was no sign of anything unusual. "So," Kate said, "did I get the job?" Week 21, day 4. Kate didn't get the job, and her condition deteriorated over the next 10 days. She even came clean about Zeb to Dr. Karnataka, who shrugged his shoulders and took a few notes down. "Psychiatrics isn't my area," he said, "but I know a good doctor who might be able to help." "I don't need a psychiatrist," Kate insisted. "I just need a little sleep." "About that," Karnataka said, "since your last blood work came back negative, we're going to have to try a different tactic." "Just give me some more meds to knock me out," Kate replied. Karnataka shook his head. No can do, he said. We can't just treat you blindly. We need to make a diagnosis so we know how best to fight the symptoms. With a bit of luck, we can cure you altogether. So what do we do? You're going to need to meet my colleague, Karnataka told her. Dr. Hansworth. He's a great man and a good doctor to boot. What can he offer me that you can't? That's easy, Karnataka said. He's a specialist psychiatrist. I don't trust psychiatrists, Kate said. Me neither, as a rule. He laughed softly, as though he'd just enjoyed a private joke with himself. Listen, Kate, there's only so much I can do to help you. I'm trying my best here, but I really think you need to see a psychiatrist. But I'm not imagining things. I believe you, Karnataka said, and Dr. Hansworth will believe you too. Still, I can't find anything physical, so I think we're going to have to change tack. The only other option I can think of is to see if a little therapy could help. Do I have to do it? No, the doctor replied, but what have you got to lose? Give it a go, Kate. You can always stop the sessions if you're not finding them useful. Kate paused. She looked at Dr. Karnataka, who was looking right back at her with a hopeful look on his face. He seemed genuine enough, and while he hadn't been able to make a diagnosis, she didn't doubt that he was genuinely trying to help her. She sighed and said, I'll think about it.
That was the latest instalment of Insomniac by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound.
Shine down on lovers, pulled in, caught in the scene. And it feels, and it feels, and it feels, and it feels. Red glow on the horizon, red wine rain down on me, and it feels, and it feels, and it feels. Rain, it doesn't matter. Rain, it doesn't bother you. Do you feel it tonight? Pain, it doesn't matter. Stay is what you're built to do. You feel it moving on and on and on when you're happy in the rain, yeah. Three souls under the bright sun, old rye keeping us free. And it feels, and it feels, and it feels, and it feels. Lockdown, socially silent, getting harder to breathe. It feels, it feels, it feels. Rain, it doesn't matter. Rain, it doesn't bother you. Do you feel it tonight? Pain, it doesn't matter. Stay is what you're built to do. But you feel it moving on and on and on when you're happy in the rain. own. Well, it feels, rain, it doesn't matter. Rain, it doesn't bother you. Do you feel it tonight? Pain, it doesn't matter. Staying's what you're built to do. Do you feel it moving on and on and on when you're happy in the rain? It's getting harder. You feel it rising. The only escape is just too frightening to consider. A mind of thunder, spirit lightning, crashing slowly, 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 slowly down. Ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, yeah. Ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, yeah, yeah. Ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, yeah. Ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee, ba-bow, dee-dee-dee.
That was Rain by Maz Manzini, and you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined now by this week's guest, who is the incredible Joel Gion, the percussionist of the Jonestown Massacre and author of In the Jingle Jangle Jungle.
Because I have a lot of writers, musicians, artists, creative folks on, I like to ask, what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Well, to be technical, the last book I reread Tom Wolfe's Radical Chic because of the Leonard Bernstein movie Bradley Cooper did, which is a great book. I've been reading a fair amount of new journalism lately, returning to. One of the genres I really like, and that book he kind of blags his way into a party Bernstein is putting for the Black Panthers. So it's just an amazing satire on the jet set kind of la-di-da American music art / world trying to help out the Black Panthers, which, I mean, they all had great intentions and it was awesome, but just kind of the silliness of that scene just being as what it would be would entail, crushed nuts encasing Rochefort cheese balls and whatnot, just the whole silliness of a high society more than anything.
Cool. And obviously today I want to chat to you about your own book. What made you decide to sort of start writing in the Jingle Jangle Jungle? Was there a catalyst that caused you to start writing it? Has it been fermenting for a while?
It was pretty spontaneous. When I was younger and the Brian Jonestown Massacre were busy being in our 20s and crazy, I was too in it to like go home and write a diary about it, because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
couldn't remember what happened 3 days ago when I started, and now I need to go to bed and start again. So I'd acquired all these crazy adventures. And now that I'm older and not doing that anymore, and have had the mileage between the two different existences and the accumulative, uh, arsenal of pop culture and music and literature and film and all these different things, I could paint that world properly for that guy that did all that stuff. So it all kind of came together that way.
yeah,
I didn't like write when I was younger and give up or anything. I was only ever going to be in a band. So I had
yeah,
the benefit of attacking it like a young person, discovering some new thing they had no idea existed before in the participational uh, experience. Um,
yeah.
so it's all very. I would say it felt extremely fresh to me to do this whole thing. It was a pure joy to write this book.
Awesome. Cool. Well, so I mean, I've been a fan of you guys for quite a few years, and actually, I was following you on social media when you were writing it, and then your publicist reached out and asked if I'd be interested in doing a review and having a chat to you. So it's kind of come full circle to me because I've sort of seen from when you first started writing it to, I mean, you posted earlier today you were holding the finished printed paperback in your hand, and I wondered like, what does it feel like to hold it in your hand and to now have this finished book?
Cool. Thanks, man. Well, my copy, I kind of stole that from the White Rabbit site. My copies got sent today. But I
Yeah.
do have the advanced copy, and to pull that out of the package was pretty, I mean, as you can imagine, it was pretty amazing. I worked on the book, as you know, in 2,500 to 4,000 word weekly increments,
Hmm.
hard deadline for 2.5 years. So I actually had about 1,000 double space book pages by the time I had to go in and edit this. So it was just pure machete work just to get this anywhere near a 400 page kind of realistic for a first time tambourine playing author to be allowed to do. So, there's a lot of stuff that's just as good still waiting around to come out. But so it's not only a 400 page book, it's almost 3 times that. So to see the first physical version of it, I just, there's so many times where you just like think like, God, this is not really ever going to happen, even when it's happening,
Yeah.
and you're talking to the right people and they're all in. Still, there's this thing in the back of your head, like, well, it's all got to just go fucking belly up. I'm sorry, belly up at some point.
Yeah.
And then it does become real. So I'm just in a complete fantasy world, honestly, to tell you the truth.
And talking about tambourines, I wanted to ask you a few questions about the act of playing the tambourine, I suppose. I mean, one of the things you mentioned in the book, which did make me laugh, was you talked about some of the other tambourine players and kind of the legacy of tambourines in the 60s, and then Linda McCartney kind of making it uncool. And then you mentioned that there's obviously yourself and Bez, I think, are the two kind of people who are well known for playing tambourines sort of since the Linda McCartney era. But I wonder, do you think all of the work that you did, do you think you've been able to make tambourine cool again?
Well, yeah, when Dig came out, there wasn't tambourine player. There wasn't, oh, and then there's the tambourine player at the side
Mm,
or whatever. Like that was long gone. And when I was doing it in the 90s, especially in America, and this is, the vantage point that I can only speak of because that's what it was, but to be in the era of grunge and be playing rock and roll clubs, people didn't know what to make of it. You could physically see the question mark bubbles floating out of people's heads, in their flannel shirts and cargo shorts and whatnot. It was kind of a battle of legitimacy that I had to navigate them because it just wasn't a thing. Today, if you turn on the TV and you watch any award show, you watch any kind of physical music performance, somebody's got a tambourine somewhere, whether they're the percussion guy with a bunch of other stuff, that they switch it up, whatever it is, the tambourine's everywhere. When I was doing it, it was nowhere. And then Dig came out, and then the psychedelic resurgence happened, and suddenly everyone's got a tambourine player. So it definitely, there was a shift pre-Dig and post-Dig, which is great. There, nobody gave a whatever about Vox guitars until Dig, and then when the whole psychedelic resurgence came out, it was all Vox guitars and tambourines. So I mean, that's cool. I'm happy for that to be, and I will put that flag in the ground.
And what do you think? What do you think Dig got right and maybe didn't get so right about the Brian Jonestown Massacre?
I think it got most things right because people behave a certain way in front of a camera, and you can't really do anything about that. It is what it is. I think maybe that the people being filmed kind of thought that they were going to be taken care of carte blanche in the agreement of allowing themselves to be filmed. They would always be portrayed in a light that they desired. And when the story kind of moved beyond those limitations to be able to tell itself properly, that went out the window. And so people got, the opinions they did about the movie because that's not the kind of movie they thought was going to be made. For me, I didn't have that problem. I just envisioned myself in a Beatles movie the whole time. So I'm just, I'm trying to communicate with the audience that I have no reason to believe will ever exist while I'm living in some horrible practice band rehearsal factory, with zero money and not even a proper toilet and the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it's just, we were beautiful, as they say, beautiful losers. We were the dreamers, and it worked.
Yeah. Well, you kind of go through it in the book that some of the crazy places you've lived in, and I thought, for me in particular, the way you wrote about the warehouse, that kind of really brought it to life to me, and I could kind of imagine it. Even though I think you had like the one photo of you, the one known photo of you in the warehouse, so it's not as though there's loads of like photographic evidence, but the way you wrote about it, I think the reader can kind of imagine it. But I wonder, like, looking back at your time in the warehouse, what do you think was the craziest thing that happened?
Well, I mean, in a situation like that, there's not going to be a lot of cameras out. It was that kind of environment. I mean, it was the 90s, and psychedelics are legal now in California, but back then, you would do 30 to life for doing what I did to pay rent, which was paint, books, which is 12 sheets. It's like a case of acid. And that's what ended up happening. This place got busted, but it was all about acid, and it was all about rave culture and the arts. And, just outsiders, like, the unsanctioned ones, trying to make a different lot for themselves through the partying that everyone is wanting to do. So, unfortunately, after that went on for a while, some more nefarious angles came into it, as can often happen with the legal lifestyles. And, I was fortunate because I and this was purposely bestowed on me from my roommates, that I wasn't going to be a part of the business side. So I was kind of this, mascot for the place that would lay sheets of acid, and that would pay my rent and bills. And then I would party, and I was in Jonestown Massacre. So I was all good. But when things went on for too long, you always have to know when to get out. And that's the huge issue with how many movies would not exist if people knew when to get out, right?
Yeah.
But things got a little more heavy. And I guess to answer your question, there was one guy who owed a bunch of money. Burning Man was this new thing, and he came and got a bunch of stuff fronted. And he went to Burning Man, and then, I don't have this or I don't have that. And these kind of like strong arm guys came, they got hired, and I'm just in my bedroom, just like whatever, and I come out to whatever it is, go to the toilet or whatever. And there's just like these two huge, like beefer dudes who, their faces, their facial features have forgotten which direction they're going in, kind of a thing. Yeah. And okay, nice to meet you. And then my roommates decided to go on vacation that weekend, and these two guys kind of added it all up. And it's okay, there's that kind of a feet dude hanging out at the place, and the people aren't there, so let's go break in and take everything. And so I'm kind of having to fend off the house, kind of Home Alone style. All this isn't in the book because I don't want to go too down all this kind of stuff, but I'll tell you here. Yeah. But to answer your question, that was probably the hairiest part.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Joel Gion, and this is Jordana Blake with U-Shaped Hole.
And I still have the sky and a home, you shaped toss your ego in the sea. Don't want me, that's news to me. 'Cause I still live, I'm free. So
That was U-Shaped Hole by Jordana Blake. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm joined now in conversation by Joel Gion, who is the percussionist of the Jonestown Massacre and the author of the upcoming In the Jingle Jangle Jungle, which is a memoir of his time with the band.
I wondered, like, as I was reading it, did you ever come across any of the acid you painted, like, later on out on the streets and sort of see it and be like, oh, that's one of mine?
No, that would have been pretty good. And it would have been easy to do because, funnily enough, back in the era of like copy stores, like in America, it was Kinko's, these Xerox copy places. You go and Xerox copy things. We would bring, because you can't Xerox copy blotter paper, perforated blotter paper.
Yeah.
So my roommate would make her own artwork on the blotter paper, and we had to bring them to the copy store to get duplicated, which is completely ridiculous. Here's a bunch of acid paper. Can you put this psychedelic print on it? So I would have recognized it, but no, I never did. It wasn't a factory or anything. It was, it was a little smaller time. It was enough for everybody to make whatever they were trying to make, but it wasn't like Owsley or anything like that.
Yeah, awesome, cool. So going back to the book and I suppose like later on in your life, what happened after the book ends, and why didn't you write about sort of moving into the 21st century and later on into your life?
That's a great question, because I did. Going back to how much material I wrote, I did write beyond that. It had to stop at some point. So I chose to stop when Dig comes out, and I rejoined the band. Now book 2 is going to start. Now I'm back in the band, and here's what happened after that up until modern times. So that's about half done. So that's what's going to happen with that.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask. So obviously you're going on your book tour soon. And I mean, I imagine this will be a first for you in terms of doing a book tour, but how do you expect it's going to be similar and different to going on tour as part of a band?
Pretty different. It's readings and then interviews with a lot of authors and writers that I'm very excited to be doing this with. So it's more of an autograph reading interview kind of affair rather than a total booze up on stage and God knows what. But I don't know, maybe it'll turn into that. I don't know. I'm not there yet. But I'm really excited. I mean, it's a dream come true. You know what I mean? It is the dream, especially to be, for an American kid, wrote a book, going to England and being a part of, all of that is quite exciting.
You talked about your boots quite a bit in the book, and you talked about how I guess even then this was when you were writing in the late 90s and more people were wearing sneakers, and you were sort of bemoaning the fact that people are going for comfort over style, and you talked about the kinds of boots that you yourself wear, and I wondered, do you find it harder or easier to find good pairs of Joel Gion boots now than you found it in the late 90s?
Oh my God, it's so much easier now with the internet. It's crazy. Back in the 90s, you had the vintage shops, and that was it. So it's like whoever's dad died dictated if you were and you had to walk in that store before any of your friends did. It was the roulette table of boots. If you were going to get that pair, and was it going to be square toe? Was it going to be pointed? Was it going to have a heel? Was it going to have a zipper? Like all of these factors, there were only so many, and they all happened in the 60s. I mean, there was Nana and there was Daljeets as well, but that was, they kind of tended to have two things. So today you can just go on the internet, and there's David Preston and there's Beatwear. And there's Everyday Hero, I think is my favorite. Sorry, other guys. And they're from Sweden, and they have silver zippers, which is that's that extra little touch that the Beatles. So yeah, no, that's a great question. But yeah, it's easier
Awesome.
now.
Awesome. And you sort of when you start the book, really, you're working in the record store, and obviously music has been a hugely important part of your entire life. I wanted to ask you about like the formats you listen on, because especially since again when the book was written and the present day, vinyl came again. You've had the progression from cassettes into CDs into MP3s. Do you have like a particular favorite, like medium to listen to music on?
Yeah, I got a whole wall of vinyl. It's always been vinyl. Um, back in the 80s, if you walked in the record store and they only had it on cassette, you would just buy the cassette as default.
Mm.
But going into the 90s, when all the shoegaze into Britpop started happening, all the vinyl import sections had all of it. And so you were able to stick with vinyl. And then when CDs came out hard, they'd been out, but when they really kind of got the status of this is what you need to own now because they sound better and they're more durable, which were all lies, as it turns out. They got all the poor hippies and everybody else to dump all of their records and buy all of their music collections again on CD. And, whenever BGM was taking a long hiatus or whatever it was, my plan B's have always been working in record stores. And you would have these poor old people come in with their useless CDs that nobody wants and be like, yeah, I was told that I had to get rid of all my vinyl and buy these CDs. And it's like, well, my God, man, like if you had all your records, you'd be walking out here with thousands of dollars, but this is all worthless. It's all plastic crap. So, the record companies completely fooled everyone, like, and like they do with streaming, like they don't pay anybody anything for streams. And they got everybody, they're just, they're the man, as it were. But I've always been vinyl all the way.
Well, and you saying that and about the streaming thing, and I've noticed a lot of sort of musicians and artists as well complaining now that the kind of the low rates they get paid for streaming has forced them to rely more on merch sales, but now a lot of venues are putting kind of a surcharge on their merch sales as well, and I think it's because, well, I suppose that's a question. Like, do you think for a band maybe starting out today, is it easier or harder to kind of get by and scrape a living?
It's the same if you're like affluent, if you're scrappers like we were, or the Beatles were, or the Sex Pistols were, you don't exist anymore. There's not going to be the next Elvis that comes out of his moving truck and starts flapping his hips around. That's done. So, I mean, whatever, I'm not like, the world keeps on turning and whatever it is, and changes happen, and that's fine. But the cost of it is there is no more poor, downtrodden voices won't exist very soon.
So again, going back to music, I thought a good question to ask you would be, what are some of the records that you've had on repeat over the last couple of months?
Well, there's things I kind of just discovered, like, why didn't I own this before? I got this Towns Van Zandt greatest hits thing I'm pretty stoked on. I'm liking that new Andre 3000 Woodwind record he just put out. Classic things. I've kind of pulled out the first Verve album again. Total crazy space rock coolness. I love spinning Erykah Badu's Mama's Gun a lot lately. All kinds of stuff.
Cool. Okay, I've got a couple more questions I just want to end on. One of them I've got to ask: Have any of the other BJM members read the book? I suppose Anton has, because he was supposed to be providing the foreword, wasn't he? I don't know if he Has that did that come about?
No, he was very excited to do it, and I was very pleased. And then three of the guys in the band couldn't do this 3.5 month long tour that
Mm.
had been scheduled. So he suddenly had to find a new band configuration, including a new
Yeah,
drummer, which is very easily the hardest part, as you probably know, to
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
replace in a band. So that took his time. We were going to try and bang it out on the road, and then the road got a little weird. I don't know if you have the internet or
Yeah, I saw.
anything.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
So
it was like
a
going
couple,
back to
couple things
golden
happened. Yeah,
age. Yeah,
couple things
yeah,
happened. So it did, that part didn't end up happening. But no, um, I spent a lot of money on a moat and a castle wall because no, none of them read it yet. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's
Well,
my story. It's everyone in life, fair enough, wants to be the center of the story, and when you take the role of telling your story, you
yeah,
inadvertently take other people with you, and have to be by definition more peripheral because they're not the narrator.
yeah.
So, that when you're talking about like bands and egos and whatnot, I mean, who knows what people are going to think?
Yeah.
But,
Well, and I think that's the specific challenge that you kind of face, yourself as a sort of non-fiction memoir writer. If you're writing a novel or something, you can pretty much say what you want, and it doesn't really affect anyone else. But when you're telling your own story, then I suppose it can be difficult sometimes to know, you know, exactly how much to say and whether people are going to get upset or not.
yeah, dig exists. So, I didn't have,
Mm.
it was very freeing in that I didn't have to navigate how big of a narc I wanted to get away with being, to tell my
Yeah,
story, because other people are doing things that involve me to a level to where the story doesn't really make sense if those things aren't involved. But that was all already out there. So I didn't have to
yeah,
worry about that. It's more about dredging old things up again or whatever it is, but it's all already out there. It's just in this scenario, it's the inside version that I'm able to tell. And also the pre-dig era 5 years of the band, and how did they get to that point? What
yeah,
happened before then that made them those people that suddenly seem to be fully formed when
yeah.
when you press play.
And just to end on, so what have you got planned next, and where can people follow you to find out more? So maybe give a shout out to your book tour as well.
Yeah, well, the book tour starts in London, which is sold out, but I will be doing a signing beforehand at Sister Ray Records. So that's pretty cool. And then from there, I go to Rough Trade in Bristol. Day after that, I go to Monorail in Glasgow. The day after that, I go to Resident Records in Brighton. The day after that, I go to Real Magic in Wendover, as you know. So there's
Mhm.
tickets available for that, everybody, if you want to jump in on that. And then it's Rough Trade in Nottingham. And then I go to Dublin to finish it off. And then I come home, and then I continue on book 2 and some other projects in the writing department that I have. And then the next BJM plans are not until mid next year if I'm still in the band.
Have you got a title for the next book?
Uh, I'm contemplating Rumble in the Jungle, but it's early. There was the
Awesome.
Rumble in the Jungle was the Ali versus George Foreman fight in the
Yeah.
70s, and they flew all those musicians, James Brown and all them cats, out to Zaire. That's an amazing documentary. I saw that in the 90s after it came out, and that just saved me in a way. I was looking for music because all the Britpop bands were on their second or third albums. They weren't quite as interesting. So I was returning back into soul music. And man, what a mind blower that documentary is. When We Were Kings, about Ali and Foreman.
Huge thank you to Joel Gion for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Broken Colours.
Tell people look on the bright side while I'm sat in the dark. I tell people to be strong even when times are hard. I bury myself, I wanna submerge. I'm dishing out advice while I'm sat out on the curb. I bury myself, I wanna submerge. Whoa, it's my time to look in the mirror and to change my errant ways. It's time that I fix relationships over time that I've prayed. It's time to enjoy life again. It's time to let you in. It's time that I should be happy. It's time to love again. It's my book and it's my story. It's my time and it's my glory. The future is for the taking. It's in the palm of your hands, and only you can find it in these derelict lands. Oh, it's my time to look in the mirror and to change my errant ways. It's time that I fix relationships over time that I've prayed. It's time to enjoy life again. It's time to let you in. It's time that I should be happy. It's time to love again. 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 It's my time to look in the mirror and to change my errant ways. It's time that I fix relationships over time that I've frayed. It's time to enjoy life again. It's time to let you in. It's time that I should be happy. It's time to love again.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. And it's time for us to head over to the Ilk Shed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
The Cramps, Off the Bone, a compilation CD. The Cramps. Think tight PVC clothing, over-the-top makeup and stiletto heels. Well, that is just the lead singer, and he was a man calling himself Lux Interior. And Lux Interior was not the main attraction. That would be his girlfriend and the band leader, Poison Ivy. With her massive red hair, gargantuan earrings, sparkly bikini tops, even higher heels, and a big semi-hollow 58 Gretsch 6120, a classic rockabilly guitar that she played like the ringing of bells, the twang of the 50s, the whammy bar vibrato and the wobbly electronic tremolo of surf music, and the aggression of punk. She was the instigator and producer, but her choice often to dress like Barbara Eden in I Dream of Jeannie made her look more exploited than empowered. There was also occasionally a female bass player that looked a bit like Ivy, or a male bass player that looked like a Toy Story reject. Most important was the drummer, always loud in the mix with simple kick and snare or tribal toms, holding together the mayhem of Lux and Ivy. The vocals have tons of echo to create a grotesque Elvis parody and turn grunts and shrieks into inhuman sound effects. They did not have the skill of other rockabilly bands that were about at the time with their plucked upright basses, like the very popular Stray Cats. But the Cramps were like a party band, a never-ending Halloween party. The music is like Link Wray's Rumble meets Shaking All Over by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, with a touch of the Monster Mash, Screaming Jay Hawkins, Alice Cooper and the One-Eyed Purple People Eater. They came out of the same New York punk scene as the Ramones and Blondie. They had a camp horror aesthetic as is demonstrated by a number of their lyrics and by their logo. They were always visually exciting, verging on being fetishistic and erotic. The CD has a number of covers including Peggy Lee's Fever and Surfing Bird. There are a lot of 12-bar blues with daft lyrics. It is a very fun listen. Lux Interior died in the noughties at the age of 60 and Poison Ivy has retired. But they became more famous than they ever have been when their cover of Goo Goo Muck was danced to by Jenna Ortega in Netflix Wednesday, the Addams Family spin-off. The Cramps, Off the Bone.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Joel Gion for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. And if you want to reach out to me here at the studio, you can drop me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is my band, The Ilk, with Watch the Planet Die. I'll catch you next week.
Protection on extension